Hello and welcome to the EDHRECast, where we're all about Commander, data, and dad jokes. I'm Joey Schultz, and this will be a bit of an unusual episode because I'm here with someone who many of you may not know, but you do know his work, and I'm very excited to talk with him about the future of Commander and the future of EDHREC. I'm joined today by the one and only Don Miner, the creator, the founder of EDHREC. Hey there, Don. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me. Glad I could fill in for some guys, but yeah, happy to be here.
Matt and Dana, who needs them? Who needs them? No, a lot of folks come to the show for, discussion of the cards, for Commander, for the gaffs, but they also come to the EDHREC podcast for some behind-the-scenes info that you don't get from just like a cursory look over the pages of the EDHREC website. So I really wanted to lean into that with this episode to talk with you, getting a peek behind the curtain, as it were.
Yeah.
To talk about like the motivations, the ideals, the things that go into maintaining a deck building tool for a community of this size. Because EDHREC did kind of change the game for the Magic landscape. And I wanted to talk with you about how the site has navigated such a shifting landscape as the game has been forced to evolve. So I hope everyone out there enjoys. And Don, thank you again for spending some time with me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I mean, I'm excited for the topic. It lets me get some things off my chest. And
Yay.
So, yeah, we're good.
I do got to say, a lot of people think that I'm the one who created the EDHREC website. So I'm losing a lot of social capital right now.
If it wasn't for Joey, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So yeah.
That's very sweet.
No, man. I mean, Joey, we originally, you came on as one of the first class of writers, right?
Yeah.
So when we started the writing stuff on EDHREC, which in the history of EDHREC is basically the same length, relatively speaking.
Right.
So Joey's been here since the beginning, and a lot of the feedback that he gets and discussions he gets with the community gets fed back into the thing. So I don't know. I wouldn't downplay your importance too much, but
thank you. That's very sweet.
Yeah.
I was being a little tongue in cheek with it, I guess, but
Yeah. I did not bring any dad jokes though.
Oh, wow. Dang. Okay.
In retrospect,
I think we'll be okay. Actually,
right.
Like to really like prove your bona fides here, Don, we'll get to your business acumen in a moment, but the most important question that I think will be in a lot of people's minds out there is, what decks does the creator of EDHREC play in Commander? What kind of player are you?
I thought this was on the list of questions you weren't allowed to ask.
I'm not surprised. This could be potentially your biggest reputational conundrum that you're about to walk into. Why don't you share with the class what it is that you like to play?
I can't call it competitive. Like, my decks are not CEH, but I definitely like things that do weird things. I like things that interact with other players, like in mostly negative ways.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I'm a stacks player. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair. For instance, you have an Iroas build that is mass land destruction deck, and then you are left behind with Iroas and a bunch of enchantments animating Iroas to then commander damage the rest of the table to bits.
Yeah.
You've got a new Tigum, extra turns, chaining those together.
Yeah.
I'd say you're very thoroughly a bracket 4 player.
I definitely love bracket 4. I think the kind of gameplay that happens in an optimized environment with decks that are really thoughtful and spend a lot of time together, I think is definitely there. But I mean, the Iroas deck, by the way, is like, yes, there is a lot of land destruction in it, but that's more like collateral damage to the other things I'm blowing up. It's like, I'm not trying to blow up your lands, I'm just trying to blow up everything, and lands just happen to get blown up. So for me, like, land destruction's on the table, like counter spell kind of locking types of situations, extra turns, things like that, are all things that I enjoy doing. I don't mind if my opponents do. In general, I mostly just want to see what like weird stuff people have cooked up. And I mean, I have a couple decks. Like, I have that green deck. I have a Beru Fist of Krosa deck that's like mini overruns.
Oh, love that one too. Probably the fairest amongst your arsenal, if I had to guess.
Yeah, like if I'm in public and like I'm playing against people I don't know, I guess I'm a socially aware stacks player.
I like it. The world could use more of those. I have actually used you in as an example in previous videos, talking about like playing against these strategies can be very, very fun, and I think you navigate a lot of those very masterfully. Like, you bring an awareness of like, how can stopping this horrible sort of Damocles looming over the battlefield, this inevitability, how can fighting against that be enjoyable? And I think you navigate those waters very well. So cool. But I'm glad that we know what type of player you are before we get into some of the other businessy type of conversation.
Yep. And I've always been like that. So
it's fun. It really is. Although you are sometimes a little bit more heartless. You have certainly shared the story of you strip mining your kid's Arixmethes commander before. And Don, that's pretty rough. As a man who was disowned by his father, I gotta say, that's one of the most brutal things I've ever heard a parent do to their child. Like, that was woo.
Not all lessons are easy, Joey. Yeah. At the end of the day, what I really like to do is fine tuning my decks. Like, I'll stick with a certain deck for a really long time. I only have 4 decks right now. If I'm not playing a deck, I take it apart. And and so that's why I built EDHREC originally, was just fine tuning decks. So yeah, I do end up fine tuning them into monstrosities like they are, but that is part of it.
Well, Don, that kind of segues us to, like, I'd like to go through some of the origins of EDHREC, because I do think that understanding the foundations that were built upon will help us understand where it is that things can go in the future. So before we discuss the future of EDH, the future of EDHREC, let's let folks know how it is that things got to where they are. After all, EDHREC is not actually your first business.
Yeah. So my previous company, it's a data analysis company. I was doing some recommendation engine work where basically like, you bought like peanut butter and jelly, maybe you need to buy bread also, kind of type things. And it was something that I was working on a lot. And I think at one point I was looking at it and I realized that a commander deck is kind of like that, where if you look at a deck like a shopping cart, for example, I can make recommendations on what cards should be in that shopping cart. And that's effectively what version 1 of EDHREC was. And right now, the evolution of that is in the Recs tab of EDHREC. So it's kind of put in the back. And some people don't even know about it. It's more effort to use, but this is what also fuels now. I think it's more often used in Architect and Moxfield for their deck recommendation things, and it's used in a couple of other places. So that initial code still lives on. It's just, I think it's more appropriate to be done not directly on the deck builder site. So
yes, sorry to interrupt. I hope it's okay to just give some quick context for folks who are unfamiliar with the feature you just mentioned.
Yeah.
The Recs tab, that's a feature on EDHREC. You can find it on the black bar at the top left of the screen, where you can paste one of your deck lists and it will show you the cards that are most commonly paired up in decks that use the cards you've already got there. I like also that on EDHREC, it provides you a second tab that will show you your most unique cards in the list too. I think we've actually done an episode about how this type of tool can help you discover what it is that makes your deck so different from anyone else's.
Yeah.
And as you said, that's an engine that is integrated into places like Architect too, where it can look at your list and show other common cards based on what's already present in what you're working on. It's very cool. Sorry again for interjecting there. I just wanted to explain that real quick, because I think some folks won't be as familiar with it, but please continue.
That's how it started. And then I didn't know how to build like websites. I was just a data guy. So I built a Reddit bot that would just respond to people asking for deck help on Reddit with like 10 recommendations, and people liked it and people used it. And then I had some, common ask was like, hey, when is this going to become a website? Because I'd like to interact with it more. I don't want to have to post on Reddit to interact with it. And that's where I was motivated to start figuring out how to build it for a website. The early versions of it were pretty bad because I built it. And then early on in the history, there's the other co-founder, David Keats. He wasn't there on day one, but he's the co-founder of the website. Basically, he basically rebuilt the website, and he still is leading up that project today. So, so that's kind of was a big pivotal moment when Keats took over the development of the website itself, and that's when it started looking better and actually became usable and everything. And so that's the origin story. Yeah.
Big shout out to the behind the scenes folks who keep that engine going, because it takes a whole lot of work. Pardon the interruption, we've got some people to thank. The EDHREC podcast is brought to you by Dragon Shield, the sleeves that our entire team uses to protect our decks. And with their new license for official Magic art on those sleeves, such as the Dragon or the new Fetchland Secret Lair arts, these sleeves have never been more stylish. Well, aside of course from our custom EDHREC sleeves over on Dragon Shield too. Follow the link to their website below and use code EDHREC, all lowercase, for a discount on your order. And thank you again to Dragon Shield. This show is also brought to you by you with your kind support over on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/EDHRECast. Supporting us for free by liking or subbing or leaving reviews is tremendous, truly it is. But for those for whom it makes sense, over on patreon.com/EDHRECast, we have a great array of perks here, like access to our exclusive Discord or our log of every single challenge the stats pick in the history of the whole entire show, and much more. And of course, who can forget our Patreon shout out? So Nick Bringhurst, shout out to you. Thank you so much for being a member of our Patreon, for making our community better, and for giving us your support. I just can't overstate how much we appreciate it. Finally, if you just can't get enough behind-the-scenes info about EDHREC, I also want to quickly mention an article by Nick Wolf over on EDHREC, which I will also link in the description box. For clarity, this is actually a different Nick. Nick Bringhurst, that was the Patreon shout-out. Nick Wolf, article writer. If I had a nickel for each Nick I just mentioned, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's funny that it happened twice. Anyway, Nick Wolf had a fantastic interview article with Don as well, so you can expand your knowledge about all things EDH and EDHREC with that article, which is again linked below, right next to all of the other fantastic information I just mentioned. Thank you, and now let's get back to the interview. I am kind of curious what the early challenges might have been, like on a technical level or on a community level or a financial level when trying to turn something that was, frankly, you mentioned a Reddit bot, like this was a side project. What were the challenges that you faced turning it into a full-time tool?
I mean, the biggest thing was my time, and I was enjoying it, so it kind of added up, and it wasn't that big of a deal. I think the bigger challenges came... I would say the earliest challenge I remember is the website going down and people noticing. Because when I first started, you only have a certain number of viewers. The website could be down for a few hours before somebody contacts me, right? And I wouldn't know. No. So it got to the point, I remember in particular one time I was on a plane and it went down while I was flying and I didn't have internet, and I landed and I had all this like Twitter notifications and stuff, and I had to fix it like while basically waiting to deboard, right?
Right. At
that point, I remember switching over. So at that time, it was running on a laptop in my office.
Right.
And
is this a story where it turns out your wife had actually closed the laptop while you were gone?
Yeah.
And that just shuttered an entire website by accident.
Yeah. So that's when I moved it to AWS at that point.
There you go.
So that was an early challenge. Most of the challenges since then have been in 2 categories. One has been dealing with the scale. So as more people visit the site, different things were breaking. Especially like early on, I particularly remember, this is almost a decade ago now, Manosaurus Wedge. He did a video on it that blew up the traffic, and the website crashed. I had to make some major changes to do the new traffic. And
Sure.
the prof did an early video on it that blew me up again, and I had to fix some things there. And now it's like people don't notice them because we're better at like hiding it, basically. But we run into scale issues every now and then that we have to kind of fix. Like there's this just recently, so we have this process called Nightly behind the scenes that basically recalculates all the stats. And that thing used to run. We ran it nightly, and it used to take an hour, and it would rebuild all the stats of all the pages. And it had gotten to the point where it was taking like 3 to 4 days to complete, to refresh all the pages, because the amount of data we had, the number of cards we had. And we just recently had a guy, Raf, one of our software engineers, he's been working on that, has got it down under a day. So, but that's not something you notice other than the fact that our pages are a little bit fresher now than you might not have realized. So yeah, that continues. The other thing too that is challenging is WotC. So
go on.
Yeah.
Honestly, Don, I think I could clip that. The other thing that continues to be challenging is WotC. It feels like a universal truth across a lot of different things, not just specific to EDHREC.
Yep. So the problem is that when they implement new things in the game, sometimes it's not their fault, and I'm glad as a player that they do it, I guess. But
yeah, it's innovative card design. Yeah.
But the first one that really maybe have some sort of crisis was partners.
I remember.
Yeah. We had to do a bunch of stuff from top to bottom on the website. We had to display cards differently. We had to store them in the database differently. And when you make that many changes top to bottom, you create a whole new mess of bugs, starts breaking things in other places.
Big domino effects.
Yeah. So that was a big one. There's all these like little custom pieces of code all over the place that handle these types of situations. The other one too, I remember one card that I'm glad, again, these are my secrets that if you want to crash EDHREC, this is how you do it.
Oh no.
I remember when Prismatic Piper, you remember what that card is?
I was going to ask about Prismatic Piper. I'm glad that you brought him up. What a nightmare of a card that was. Yeah. Able to colorless partners anywhere. Yeah.
So that one, I remember me and Keats looking at that one and we basically ignored it and just hoped that nobody actually ended up playing it. And we lucked out. So if they ever print out a card like Prismatic Piper that's actually good, we'll have to figure out some stuff to figure out like what color basically the person picked. So
it's funny hearing about some of the early challenges because some of those do persist. Like you mentioned, scale was an early challenge, and the game is only getting bigger. So obviously the issue of scale is a thing that we continue to be affected by and motivated to help find fixes and such like that.
Yep.
We've learned lessons from that will obviously need to be applied going forward in the future.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every set we're watching for weird stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even when they have a new card type, like a battleground, for example, not a huge problem, but still something we have to add, we have to handle correctly. Brackets is probably the largest change. Brackets is more, that one was more different because we wanted to do that. Like, we wanted to better support, brackets. We knew people were going to be interested in knowing more about brackets and filtering down by bracket. So that one didn't feel as bad because like we wanted to do it. It was still a ton of work, but it wasn't like if we don't get this done, then we won't have stats for like a certain card, right? And and so but those pop up all the time, and
This does kind of lead me to, again, looking back on how things got to where that they are. I am curious, one final thing about the origins of the site, what you were initially aiming for in the creation of it. You described what the tool was when you first made it, but do you think that was motivated primarily by, for instance, trying to make EDH more accessible, lowering the barrier to entry?
I mean, I kind of fell into it, to be honest. Like, I don't know if I had a big plan doing it. It was mostly just like building it for myself, getting good feedback from the community, and that iteration loop has kind of continued until today, right? And though I can tell you specifically the problem I was trying to solve was like I was an avid Reddit user for the REDH subreddit, and I was kind of irritated that so many of the threads were deck help, and so many of them had such low-hanging fruit recommendations, right? So like people would post a deck and then, they would forget things like Soul Ring, for example, right? Like they would just forget Soul Ring. And then inevitably there was some guy in the comments is like, oh, you forgot Soul Ring, you dumbass, right? And like, to me, that was boring because like there was this base level of recommendations in the cards where there's a large portion of a commander deck that's not interesting, right? Like in terms of like their staples, their cards that I need to be playing for the deck to run smoothly. And then there's like some subset of the deck that actually is the soul of the deck, right? It's almost like how you and I, our DNA is only like 0.5% different, but we're very different people. But there's so much stuff about being human, right? So I think a commander deck's kind of like that. And so for me, like as somebody that's interested in the weird stuff decks are doing, like I don't really care to see like your best Iroas deck. I want to see an Iroas deck that's doing something weird. So kind of paradoxically, I made it really easy to find the obvious thing so that you could focus more on the weird stuff of your deck. And that is kind of a core thesis, I guess, of why I wanted to build this thing. Because I think even just building a basic functioning deck with the number of cards that are available is really hard. And I thought that was kind of gatekeepy, right? Like if I had a really cool idea, but like my fundamentals weren't clear because I didn't memorize all 20,000 Magic cards, then that's a bad experience. So I'd rather people focus on the more interesting parts of their deck, and that's really what the start of it was. I didn't maybe realize it at the time, but that's definitely what it turned into, and I realized that pretty quick that that's what I was doing.
Yeah, I feel like pieces of that are also reflected in the decks that you choose to build. Like, there's a MLD Iroas that we mentioned earlier. That's uncommon. That's unusual. But a piece of like knowing what everyone else is doing did help you find, cool, I can take this other tactic. Or I know for a while you had a mono black Oloro deck, or you used to play Tanafa, which was phasing out your own lands. And you, I believe, had that because it was deliberately so left field compared to the rest of the stuff that was more common. So it's nice to see that energy behind the people who are making EDHREC what it is, treating things as a foundation to help folks find something that is more accessible and easy for them to have maybe an entry point into the game. But then you're also able to use it as a springboard to bounce off into a completely different idea that isn't being accessed. And it isn't being accessed as much because we've seen what already currently is popular. And I love seeing the duality that a tool like this can be used for. So
yeah, I mean, when I have a new deck idea, I definitely go look at it on EDHREC. Like one of the earliest things to do is like have other people have this idea, right? And it's hard to come up with a completely fresh idea, but if there's only like 2 or 3 other decks that have done the same thing as I am, I consider that unique. And that's something I was definitely striving for, though. One thing that has shifted over time, though, is that like, especially, and it's not necessarily just the website, but the types of players we're seeing in Commander lately. Like my kids are getting into it. People are getting into it because of Lord of the Rings or whatever, Universes Beyond thing, or like, I don't know. There's a nice fresh pool of people coming into the game, and
for sure,
and into the format, right? And so having to consider these like newer players has been interesting because I'm the opposite of a newer player. I've been playing for quite some time. And so they have different needs. And one thing that I've loved hearing, for example, is like, I really like playing the game, but deck building stresses me out. I mean, it's basically the classic net decking thing. Is like, hey, I just want to net deck and then play a deck. Like, I don't want to have to spend all this time thinking about my deck, right? And the fact that it's able to get somebody into the game and start playing, it can create that feedback loop of, okay, now I like playing the game. I want to get better at building decks. You know, if you kind of get stuck at deck building and you never play, that's, you know, maybe a player that ends up not playing at all, right? So, so I think that's in how EDHREC has taken off with new players, I think has been something that we've noticed in the past few years, and how they find it useful has been fun. And also too, balancing that with the things that the power users want to have too has been kind of interesting. But, you know, the team has been figuring it out, so.
Yeah, I like that. But sort of moving from like, all right, understanding our origins into like current mission statements. I like that maintains itself as a piece of the heart of this, despite all of the evolutions that are going in from the game. It's nice to see the way that EDHREC has positioned itself currently, that we do feel like community tool first. Like, this is what this is here for, because also it is a tool that can only exist because of that community. Yeah. So it feels nice to pay it forward in that way, I suppose. The way I should say it. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the number one compliment I get is like, hey, your tool has made it so much easier for me to play, or help me get into the game. Right.
Right.
It's that's the best compliment I get.
Yeah. That does make me ask, now that we're moving from past into a little bit more in the present, what the biggest pain points the team is currently having to solve might be. Like, what are the things that people might not realize can actually be trickier behind the scenes over at EDHREC? And, you know, it can be anything from like data accuracy to like new UI, new formats, new cards. Like, if there's anything that you want to speak to, but just like, oh, here's trouble on the horizon that you have your eye on, or like we're already working on solutions to.
Yeah.
What are those things that we need to be aware of?
So I have maybe a cop-out answer. You know, it's like, what are your three weaknesses, you know, when you're in a job interview and you're like, oh, I care too much, you know? Like,
sure. Yeah.
I think the challenges are pretty well taken care of at this point. Like, we've had the blessings of making enough money that we can hire like really good folks, right? And we've got like Craig keeping the stuff up, you know, like he does all our AWS infrastructure stuff. We've got Keats running things. We've got Raph doing data pipeline stuff. This past year we hired data scientist Julia, who's been doing all our data analysis things.
Shout out to Julia.
Yeah, she's awesome. We have a couple new folks too. We have Adam, who's been working on some like large scale data analysis stuff. That's been a kind of a bottleneck for some cool features that we have coming up. And then we have Garrett, who's doing a bunch of front end stuff that not a lot of people have seen, and I'll kind of explain why. But so the team's awesome. You know, like, we love what they're doing, and what you don't notice what they're doing is when they're doing a good job. So that's kind of a paradox. Now, the biggest issue that we're running into right now is, how do we not mess it up, right? How can we, right? Like, how can we move this thing forward but not screw it up? Like, you know, we don't want to move a button, you know, even small things like, oh, this button was here before and that's where people are going to expect it. We can't move it over here because then people will get frustrated. Like, small things like that, where we have so many people that use the site that we have to be so much more careful about changes we make. Yeah. So where before we could just be like, this is the right thing to do, users will get used to it. Is not something that we are really doing anymore. So when Garrett, for example, is working on overhauling a lot of the user interface, it's going to start looking a lot prettier. And actually, there are some pages that he's released already that, again, look prettier.
The pre-con pages right now, the pre-con upgrades page is a huge highlight. If folks haven't seen that in a while, it is very intuitive and really lovely. So yeah, good example.
Exactly. But there's so much time that has to be taken into figuring out how that all fits in and making sure it's done right. So where before we were able to just kind of YOLO it a little bit more, we had to be a lot more careful. The other thing too is that, like, I don't know if we're supposed to be keeping this confidential. I don't think so. I guess I can spoil it if I want to. But Julia is working on a new synergy score. Yes. And that is going to change things. So, like, the number's different. It means something different. We think it means something better in our testing, and we're excited about it. But we don't know what, like, person out there is like keeping some spreadsheet of synergy scores because he's running some sort of experiment, or, you know, uses this thing for deck building or whatever. And we're going to get an email about it, right? Like, like, that person exists, and you know, we want to be sure we can't mess around with this, right? Like, there's people that depend on the data in ways that we didn't expect, and, you know, we want to do something for everybody. So that's the big thing is like the new synergy score, which we're calling lift, is great. And if we had the choice between synergy and lift when I first put synergy out, we would have obviously picked lift, right? It's better in every single way. But the problem now is like, well, how now we have to check, like, is it different than synergy, right? Like, where in what cases is a ranking of a card going to be different on the page than it was before? Right. And is that a good thing or a bad thing for that card to be gone, whether or not it's an error or not, right? So the amount of testing and scrutiny that we put ourselves through just to make sure that, you know, we're keeping everybody happy with major changes like this is the biggest challenge, right? And it's a good challenge. I'm glad that we have users that keep us honest and have want high quality in their products that they're using, and you know, we're happy to do it. But if I had to pick a challenge, that's it. Is that we have to do way more testing. We have to do way more validation. We do a lot more like, hey, is this right or not right? Way more discussions. So where before I would just kind of like ship it and it might crash the website, but you know, like
yeah. A skiff or a canoe can move, you know, do a turnabout pretty quickly. But once you get to a certain size of sea vessel, it is going to be, you move a couple of degrees and that's going to radically affect the course that you're on for sure. Yep. So it does start to feel like that. I think that's cool. And I appreciate you teasing an upcoming thing that will be on EDHREC eventually. We're just going to tease everybody out there a little bit for that. Look forward to that. And Julie's done amazing work on it. I'm excited for people to see that feature.
And if you're that person that I just talked about,
who gets mad about it,
that will get mad about synergy score being better, please let me know.
Yeah, honestly.
I'll figure out how to get that data to you some other way.
You mentioned a moment ago, like the site might have something that people aren't aware of. I do want to ask you real quick. What's one underrated feature that EDHREC does have capabilities for that maybe you think a lot of people don't actually know about?
I mean, the answer for this always has been advanced filters.
Yeah, I champion them a lot on this channel, so that was going to be my answer too.
I mean, I wish it was easier to use. It's a challenging user interface exercise. Like, this is something that we want to improve. And it requires a little bit of knowledge of the game, because sometimes when you're filtering things out, like I remember before we had budget filters, the number one way to get a high budget decks was to include Mana Crypt. And if you included Mana Crypt in the thing, it's not because you cared about decks that had Mana Crypt in it, it's because you cared about decks that had expensive cards in them.
Right.
And so, you know, there's tricks like this that you start picking up, like, for example, filtering out, you know, precons, for example, if you want to like remove the precon effect. We've tried, you know, a little bit, but if you want to do a really good job, you just want to filter out a couple of the cards that are really popular in the precon. So there, you know, there's things like that you can filter out, like make sure that you have enchantments for, like, I want to only see decks that have at least 30 enchantments in them. I want to have this particular card. So yeah, I mean, advanced filters is definitely it. I think runner up is the Rex page. Yeah.
Underrated gem right there. I agree.
It's decent amount of work to get your deck list, to paste it in there, to look through the stuff. It's not that much better than just doing it directly on Architect and Moxfield, which is where I generally am doing it, where on Architect, when I'm on there, like, you know, you click on the EDHREC and it shows you the cards. It's the same stuff that's running if you just go to Rex, but we provide a little bit more data there, and it's hard to make improvements on that. You know, I hope that we can kind of give that a new look at some point. But that's definitely my runner up too.
Yeah, that's a very cool tool to help you see the stuff that is most common in your deck, the stuff that is unusual in your deck, which can, I don't know, when I see like, oh, I've pasted my deck in here and it shows me all these cards that I'm playing that not a lot of other people are playing, I'm just like, yeah, I found my cool stuff. Like, when I play this card, people are going to be like, ooh, what's that? It gives me a signal about the kind of things that I could lean into even further if I wanted to really surprise folks. And that's a delight to see. So I do appreciate both of those tools a whole lot. But I completely agree. They are the kind of things that maybe the average user might breeze past. But if you do end up using them, hot damn, are they really, really good tools. Yeah. That is some current stuff, but, you know, I believe I'll probably have named this episode The Future of EDH, or The Future of EDHREC. I think from knowing all of that with where we were, where we are now, I do kind of want to look ahead. You've just teased potentially, you know, a big feature or direction that could be coming to the site. But I am also kind of curious how EDHREC plans to deal with future shifts in the game, which seem like they are constantly coming. I mean, I joked earlier about like wizards making things difficult or whatever. And I do not mean that as shade on any individual designer. We're friends with a whole bunch of folks there. But the company has made certain decisions in the past that have been a little bit eyebrow raising. And they also do seem to continually push an evolution for the Commander format specifically. Rather than things evolving organically, it is a thing that has sort of been forced to evolve in a quick amount of time, which does have big effects on how players engage with the game. So how is it that you think we feel equipped to deal with some of those evolutions too? If they change the format rules, or if they invite new set mechanics, things like that, are there any things that you'd want to comment on in that area, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that honestly I'm that worried about. I think, again,
Okay.
the team is well positioned to have, we handled the brackets thing pretty fast. And I want to say, though, in general, I think EDH in Commander or whatever, it has more options, right? Like, there's more things you can do. Like, if I want to make a Final Fantasy deck that's only Final Fantasy cards, right? Or if I specifically don't want to play Universes Beyond, or I only want to play old stuff, or like all my cards need to have borderless printings, right? Like, there's so many ways that us as a community are finding ways to have fun with this game that are probably not even what WotC expected, and we want to be able to provide like that. So, for example, like if you're trying to build a deck that only has borderless cards on it, that's not something that we can filter for, and EDHREC can help you do, right? Like Scryfall, I think, is a good choice for that. So I think that, really just diving in a little bit deeper and figuring out ways that we can help people get to what they're trying to do a little bit faster, I think we need to have the scalability for that. And I think that's what's been driving a lot of the changes that we've been making internally, like making this nightly thing faster. Is if that thing's faster, then we have room to be able to make more pages, right? So, so the combination of growing with the scope of the game and helping people find that relatively quickly, I think, is going to be the larger challenge. We've got the UI redesign that's not just about making it prettier, it's about making it more functional, easier to find things. Navigation is going to be improved, right? Things are going to be easier to find on the front page, things like that. And so, like, it's things of that nature that we need to keep up with. If we just kind of let it sit here, then I think the tool would just become too. It's almost like I see the space of Magic expanding, right? It expands in terms of, like, you have more options that do the same thing, you have more options that do new things, and I think naturally people are going to want to play more variety of things. I mean, I remember that back in my day, like pre-Commander precons, right, before like Allura was printed and those guys. I mean, the variety of commanders that you could play was pretty low, right, in terms of viable commanders. And so, like, I'd pretty much, just having played Commander a lot, you pretty much see like every single commander, what everyone does. And maybe there's a couple different ways to build it, but the card pool was pretty small. Like, now I don't even ask what your commander does until like turn 6, right? Because like, so that's what I think in terms of my site. I see the game change a lot, and it's just the amount of variety that we have, and keeping up with that variety, I think, is going to be the hardest thing.
They are printing like 400 legendary creatures in every set. Genuinely, I might like throw a graph here on screen. I won't bore folks with the exact numbers, but like watching the number of legends that are printed every year jump up in the ways that they have, from a couple dozen into the hundreds of legends that are new every single year with each set. It is kind of demanding when we do need to have pages for every single one of those. So that is task upon task.
Okay, and I'm really not commenting on whether I like this not, or as a player or not. It's more just like, when you have 40 commanders that are printed, there's so much more overlap between the different commanders, and it's a little bit more ambiguous about what a deck can do. Like for example, if you wanted to play Life Gain, there's like 1 or 2 commanders you could play, right? And that was your only options for Life Gain, right? Like, now there's so many options. You can do it with food tokens, you can do it with Soul Sisters or whatever. So, like I think the commander in some senses has almost become less important, I think, as time goes on, as we have more versions of it, because, I mean, there's still some quintessential, ones that are showing up in the top list, but this middling group that's kind of in the middle, where they're like viable but not popular, like, there's so many choices that you can make on those commanders. And I think for me, that's a good thing, because, again, we can make new pages. It gives us something to work on, and allows us to dive into the data a little bit differently, right? So from a data perspective, all this stuff is really, like, we can complain about this stuff as players maybe, but for me, it's like, oh, this is giving me like more unique data to play with, and there's more stuff for us to find and investigate, right? So, which is why we ended up hiring a data scientist. So, so I guess it's pretty cool. I mean, like a lot of the changes and complexity of the game for us has been honestly pretty fun to work on, and yeah, so it's been cool.
I am also curious about like, I guess, community-driven development for the site too. How user feedback has factored in and how it will continue to factor in. User input, I feel like, has informed quite a lot of the changes over time. And as sentiments of players is growing, for instance, you mentioned the possibility of like Universes Beyond, and all Universes Beyond deck and all Final Fantasy deck or something, versus ignoring that completely. That might be the kind of sentiment from different users that we see that could affect how we organize things on the site, stuff like that. I'm kind of curious about what the future of EDHREC might look like, given as the game evolves, the players evolve along with it, and what things could come out of those situations too, those scenarios.
Well, first of all, users are the best ones that see issues or they want things, right? Like, I mean, if somebody's sitting there on the site and is like, I wish it did this, even if it did do it, that just means that we don't have it obvious enough, right? So, yeah, I mean, honestly, people complaining about like something it's not doing is great, you know. And once we start seeing themes about these things, like we can start working on some solutions for it. So, like the Universes Beyond thing is something that is polarizing. There's some people that like it, some people that don't, and you know, we're, instead of just being like, you will like it or you will not like it, you know, we would rather just implement a solution that allowed the people that wanted to leave those cards out or default to universes within printings, for example, for art. You know, that's one thing the team's working on right now. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is just listening to people complain, which honestly Magic players don't have a problem doing. I don't know. I mean that as a joke, but people are passionate, and it's cool that when EDHREC is part of their workflow and enjoying the game, that we get complaints about how either we're doing something wrong or we could be doing something better. It's mostly coming from a place of people caring about that, and that's way better than people not caring about what we're doing. So
yeah,
that's great. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. You know, a lot of our features that we end up doing are, I mean, at this point, like, even if we have ideas internally, it's not like we haven't heard that idea before. It's more just like, hey, I think I've finally found a solution to this thing that people have been complaining about, is how we start something, right? And that's been a healthy process. And at the end of the day, like, I mean, people don't like the site, they're not going to visit it, and then the site won't need to exist anymore. So it's not just fun, it's not just nice, it's survival at the same time. So you know, we all kind of win in the end.
There you go. EDHREC has also been pushing into other places, other areas that it could support. For instance, CardSphere is one that we've thrown some weight behind, because it is such a neat service to sort of bring trading back into this trading card game.
Yeah.
Some folks out there might wonder, is that like a one-off thing, or is this like a continued part of the mission? I know the answer, but I'd love for you to be able to speak on like your motivations behind supporting other types of things like that too.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't get enough of it, right? Like, I think that's really what it's coming from. Like, it's really cool to be able to kind of like float things around so that we can, you know, accomplish new things, right? And so it's really just about reinvesting in the niche and reinvesting in the sites that we think need to exist. And so yeah, I think we're going to be looking around to see, you know, what other opportunities there are to continue to reinvest in tools for the community, and reinvest in things that we know how to do. Reinvest in things that like particularly users care about. Yeah. We really like to partner with other sites, whether it's data or propping somebody up from you know, they have a new product they want to advertise, helping them out, right? So it's like all the people that are successful in Magic care about Magic more than their own business.
Yeah, truly.
That's why it's so fun to be here, right? Is that like, you know, when I was working for, you know, some evil company or whatever, nobody actually cares about, you know, like B2B sales, right? But like this, we actually care about it. So like, it's kind of cool because everybody's on the same page, right? Like in terms of like, okay, well, I like your business, I like my business, but at the end of the day, is this good for the game? And if it is, then we should do it. And if not, we're probably fooling ourselves that this is a better idea than we thought, right? At the end of the day, it's really just about partnerships and providing help where we can and doing cool things when the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah, well, I mean, CardSphere is one example, but there's also a lot of support that I think is not hugely visible that the average person or average player won't necessarily know about, like the financial support that you've also lent to a lot of creators, large and small out there, or the connections that you've helped to a lot of people in this community to make, or the charitable giving that you've pushed for as well. It is neat to see that reinvestment of your success into other people in a way that does honestly really ripple out, even if it is not always the most visible thing. And that is an interesting thing that I just wanted to comment from, from me to you directly. People happen to be listening, but it is neat that you are not seeking spotlight for that. I'm sort of pushing you into the spotlight with this video. But that is a thing that you are very contented, just like, I just want to support this stuff, and that's cool. I'm not the main character of this situation.
But
that is a thing that I do want to just thank you for.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of what this video is about. Like, I think some of the folks at EDHREC were like, and SCM were like, hey, Don, you need to like start talking more about what you're up to. And because I generally have like appreciate, I'll be at like I'm reminded of this, like I'll be at a MagicCon, right? Like playing a game with Joey and Dana and Matt, right? And there's the four of us are playing, and people are probably looking at me like, how the hell did that guy, what contest did he win to be able to play with these guys? And and I love to when they come up and ask for you guys' signatures, and they like donate, and like I'm taking pictures for you guys, and like, oh my god, I'm so thankful that I can just sit here and play a game without people harassing me. So
I'm sorry to have ruined that for you here.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it up, but the main thing I want to say is that like it's not hard to do charitable giving to causes that are important for our niche, that affect people inside of our niche. So, we've given to like Trevor Project is one that we've given to, just as an example, right? That is one that is popular inside of our community as a place for help, and we've been happy. It's an easy yes to whenever we can support that, right? And when we support content creators through like a sponsorship, or they're getting started, we're trying to just kick them some money or whatever, even up to for example, we sponsor Command Zone also top to bottom. We like that. We actually think that sending these people money and having them build content is better for the game. Like, it's true. Like, so I guess what I'm saying is like, it's cool to get thanked for something, but at the same time, like, we're all winning here, right? Like, it's good business. It's good for the game. It's good for us as players. And for a group of Magic players that are so, they care about a lot of things. And Magic, the gathering here with all of us is a lot more than just the game itself. And, this is why I got my kids into it. And, this is one of the reasons why I enjoy it, why I think people accepted me into playing this game originally when I started playing it, is has a lot more to do with than just the game. So supporting social causes, supporting people that are trying to get into the business, trying to build things for the community. I mean, why not, right? Like, it's super easy. So, I appreciate the sentiment, but, at the same time, like and you know what? I see this with everybody, right? Like, I talk to a lot of the other website owners. We work on problems together, and a lot of them are like this. I don't know anybody that's a complete scumbag. So, so it's cool. It's an easy place to work, right? Amongst my website colleagues. Yeah.
You mentioned other websites there. I'm kind of curious to hear you talk a little bit, just real quick, whether EDHREC will ever support other formats beyond Commander, or even other games. We have tried things like FabRec before, Flesh and Blood recommendations. But each one of these, it turns out, has different challenges. We tried Brawl Rec for a while too. I'm a little bit curious for your take on potentially trying to go out and to support some of those areas as well, and what challenges each of those potentialities also. What you face with there.
I mean, we would love to be smacked in the face as something we had to support, right? I mean, why not? Like, it would be great to expand and have cover different aspects of the game, but each one has its unique challenges, right? Like, so let's list through them, right? One is just the amount of building EDHREC versus building FabRec, if they were feature parity, is about the same amount of work, right? But one game is like 1,000 times larger than the other one. So
right.
So there's this just business economics of like certain websites can exist for a certain niche and they can't exist for other niches, which is unfortunate. I had actually there's this I went in this deep dive on this. There's this old Lord of the Rings game that was printed out in the 90s, and there's still like a very fervent community around this game. Yeah. But like the card pool never changes. There's probably only a couple thousand people that play it. Like there's no way that I could pay a software engineer to do this, and I'm glad that there's community tools that are supporting this, right? So that I don't have to do it. So the number of players is big, and I mean honestly, if I knew what I knew now, and I started EDHREC at the size it was then, I probably would make an argument that we shouldn't start EDHREC, right? So there was like a little bit of stupidity involved in terms of like, hey, I just wanted to build this thing, and then eventually when the economics needed to exist, it worked out. So I guess what I'm saying is that that's the biggest thing, is the scale of the game, and there's not many things that are as big as Commander or even 1/5 the size of Commander, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the size of the game is one. The other one is like, what information are people looking for, right? And what we found is that EDHREC, the model of the way the data is organized, works really well when you have lots of cards, and it's an eternal format. It's not rotating. This was one of the problems we had with Brawl, was that the data turned over so quick when Brawl was first released that the pages weren't that interesting. The card pool wasn't large, and it's not that Brawl Rec was useless. It was that deck building wasn't that hard that you needed a tool like it. Like you could just figure out your deck building yourself. Like you didn't need to go to a tool. With EDHREC, the card pool is so complicated and complex that you need a tool to. Well, you don't need to, but like most people need a tool to help them build. So I guess it's how many players are playing it. Is the complexity high enough that somebody actually wants to read through it? And this is where we run into some issues in terms of like we've really narrowed it down in terms of what things are doing. I play historic Brawl a decent amount on Arena, and I would love to have historic Brawl Rec. I mean, it's cool, but one of the issues is the deck building sites are not as there because people are building their decks in Arena, not on Architect or Boxfield. So there's kind of an impasse there. We could figure it out, but and also too on Arena they don't support like competitive ranks and things like that on Brawl, so there's not like that incentive, the fervor around it that other formats on Arena have. So basically what I'm saying is like, hey, I would love to do Brawl Rec again. We did it once when it was just rotating and it was in paper, but it's kind of evolved into this like Commander Light on Arena, which is a lot of fun, and I would love to be able to support that more, but it's not quite there yet. So in terms of other games, like Magic's just really big, right? Like I think not only is it big in terms of player base, but in terms of history. So there's a lot of new games that are coming out, and a lot of these games are really good. You could even categorically say that some of these games were able to use the lessons learned of Magic over the past 20 years to build a better game. Okay, just categorically, mechanically a better game, right? But the problem is that we have like 30 years of cards that have all this history that it's going to take so long for one of these guys to catch up to give the depth of the game. And that too goes into the tool of like one of the reasons why EDHREC needs to exist is because of the depth of the game, right? Like of how deep you need to go to find things. So I think in terms of building an EDHREC for another game, we've really struggled to find another idea. We would love to. On the other side though, like we just generally build loving websites. We're all pretty nerdy, I think. We like card games. There's a bunch of like World of Warcraft players here. There's a bunch of D&D players. There's people that are into all sorts of weird stuff here. And so we may consider like going into another niche, maybe, if we felt like it. But at the same time, like there's plenty to do inside of Magic. And if we stuck with Magic, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, well, and it's also obviously where I have made my home here too. But even when I do have curiosity as well, like, I'm excited to try out things like Riftbound. That game is so brand new that we don't have the depth there that would like necessitate the exact same tools, and therefore that should be taken into account in any future adaptations. Which is again just sort of reflecting on like the needs of the user becomes one of the primary priorities here, which is nice to see, nice to hear. I do think this turns us to now, though, sort of, zooming out, a broader vision here, where it is that you see EDHREC in 3 years, in 5 years. what new, adjacent opportunities may exist, as well as any potential challenges that are ahead. There's a lot of speculation about what's going on with the future of the game, and even a couple years ago, I don't know that people would have expected the state of the standard as it is now, 7 sets in this upcoming year, things like that. There have been all of these changes that have sort of felt like a bit of a forced evolution is one way that I've characterized it before, which of course has forced all of the players to adapt and forced us to adapt. So there's a lot that we cannot see coming, but I am curious if there is sort of this distant point that you have in your head, what it is that might look like, both for players, for the game, but also for the site and for what tools it is that we can offer to people out there.
Yeah, there's 2 things that come to mind, maybe 3 depending on how you count, in terms of like big changes, big improvements we want to make to EDHREC that we have people working on right now, that I think is going to satisfy some of these things. At the end of the day, we're along for the ride as much as anybody else is. The WotC guys have got a little bit nicer about giving us a heads up if they're going to do something that might be something we have to work on.
We've learned from you, Prismatic Viper.
Yeah, they didn't tell us about that. I found out about, like for example, I found out about partners at the same time everybody else did, right? And and I remember having a meltdown. Like the brackets thing, they gave us a heads up on, which was great because we were able to have a good implementation. So I think with them helping us on the bigger changes, we can kind of keep up with the game, and we have a larger team now, so I don't think keeping up is going to be a problem. I think so. In 3 years, we'll have kept up, I guess is the best way of putting it. The couple things that I think are really exciting are, one is this user interface refresh that Garrett's working on. He's going to hate that I'm like pumping this up. One of the big reasons for it isn't necessarily so that users go and like, oh, this is prettier, this is better. It's, over time, EDHREC's gotten disorganized, right? So like we'll build something and then we're like, okay, this looks good. And then me and Keats would come up with a new feature and then we tack it on, right? And it's like, well, where the hell do we put this thing? It's like, well, there's this room for this button over here, right? So when you do that enough times, like the pages start getting a little cluttered, it gets harder to add new things. So one of the big goals of the redesign is to give us more room to grow and add more features and add more depth to the pages, add more like ways you can interact with the data and things like that. So the UI redesign is not necessarily about like just making it look better. It's about giving us more space to provide more depth on each individual page, and more data and more information. So I think the redesign is just the first part of that. We couldn't really do it. We kind of had to start fresh, and that's one thing I'm excited about. And that probably is coming out in the next year or so. Probably sooner, but I don't want to, again, stress Garrett out. He's on vacation right now.
Garrett will murder us if so.
Yeah. He's on vacation right now. So, the other thing too that I'm really excited about is the data analysis stuff that we're doing. So, I came from a machine learning data science background where I was working on all sorts of like data analysis stuff for like companies. I was doing all this fancy stuff, and honestly, the data analysis stuff on EDHREC is not that sophisticated. It's a lot of just like counting and proportions and things like that. And now that we have a ton of data and we have a long history of data, Julia in particular has been really able to tease out some things that are interesting. She has the Spire and Ice series that she's been posting, and
fantastic series. Highly recommend. Link will be in the description, folks. It's a really good series.
And then also too, if you guys have noticed the hot card marker on certain pages, that's something she's been working on. So I'm excited about doing more sophisticated stuff, like harder tech stuff. And because we have the data, we have the people to do it, and those are going to start squeaking out. I mean, that is kind of hampered a little bit by the UI, because like if Julia creates all these nice charts and doesn't have anywhere to put them, then that's kind of a problem. So these 2 things go hand in hand. The other thing too that we have going on right now is we have a guy, Adam, and Raph. They're working on what we're calling the spoiler chain, which is basically once a card is spoiled and starts getting built on Architect, can we get those pages updated faster on EDHREC, right? And so that's like the speed of the data, something we're improving on. Like at one point, like I said, with Nightly being 3-4 days old, if you're looking at an EDHREC page, it's like we have the data to show you more recent data. It's just we haven't refreshed the page yet. So like one thing you'll notice now is that our deck data for spoiled cards already is a couple days faster than it used to be. And we would love to get it down to like 15 minutes. So that's something we're working on right now. Then the other thing is the scale of the data. Like we have all this data, we can calculate larger trends. We have a lot of places to show like individual trends, like if I'm on this commander, what cards are hot, what cards are people playing, things like that. But like where on the site can you tell like, oh, people are playing black more, or like people are changing the number of lands they're playing, or things like that. Like there's no place for us on the site that we really have that. And these are some large scale data analysis things that with the new data infrastructure that we're building out and the new players that we have, the new engineers that we have, or things we can do, we just need to figure out where to put it all, right? So yeah, so that's the three things. The UI redesign is going to help us add more features, allow us to add more depth to the data. The speed of the data is going to be better because with all these cards getting spoiled, that's something we wanted to get better at. So many cards are getting spoiled at such speeds that, we want EDHREC to be one of the earliest places you look when you want to start bringing a deck idea. And then finally, just like the scale of the data and being able to handle all that stuff is all exciting stuff. And so I would say over the next few years, like you'll be able to see these more macro trends in the data. You'll be able to really dive a lot deeper into the data on an individual commander you want to research more about, and everything should be just easier to find.
Fantastic. Now, Don, I know you to be a pretty private guy, but I am kind of curious, are there any upcoming events that you're like going to be at, or like any public appearances that you are interested in doing in the future? You being on here on this video is already like one thing that I do feel would kind of like strong-armed you into a little bit, but I'm curious if that's an indication of more stuff that you're doing in the future, or where are you at with that kind of deal?
Yeah, I'm trying to get out there a little bit more. I think the as we've gotten our lives together here a little bit and we're starting to spend more time on partnerships and working with other people, it's better for me to get out there, right? And so the big thing is that I've pretty much started going to multiple Magic events. Maybe I'd just go to like one MagicCon a year. I'm trying to hit all of them now, and even hit a couple of extras as well. Like there's just so many good opportunities for me to meet with everybody. So I'll probably be at all the MagicCons coming up, in the near future, unless I have some sort of conflict. So I definitely have been enjoying those, just as an excuse to play the game, but also to the business impact of being able to work, with other website owners, with content creators, meeting with our own team physically has been great. And so I'll be keeping and going out to those. The other aspect too is like, we're kind of a real business now. Like when, inside of the Magic community, we're this tool, but to somebody outside of the Magic community, we're a successful website that has a significant user base, and that's generating ad revenue and affiliate revenue and all these things. And as we've gotten larger, there's people that are coming to me for advice now, and that's kind of a scary thing. So next week, for example, I'm talking at the Mediavine conference, which is Mediavine is the ad provider that we have EDHREC and Architect on, and they keep the lights on, help keep us paid and all that stuff. And they asked me to come out and talk about how to grow your business, right? And and so I'm giving a talk there about this, because this is a common issue that we have with content creators and website owners and all these things, is that sure, like being really successful is great, but if you can't scale yourself, then you're kind of trapped. So you have a lot of website people that are just them, or content creators that are just them. They're doing everything themselves,
right?
And so people are asking me like, well, how do you hire people? Like, how do you find people? Right? There's some very basic fundamental question that is real scary. So I had the benefit of having some business expertise. Before here, I had my own data analysis consulting company before this, and then before that, I was a tech executive in multiple different facilities. So I guess what I'm saying is like, this isn't my first rodeo. So like a lot of this stuff was kind of easier for me. And I was able to have that perspective, where a lot of people that are successful in a niche like this either weren't chasing that success, or they weren't expecting it. Now they've got this huge website, or they got this huge channel, and they're like, how do I keep giving people what they want? And I can't do it all.
Yeah.
And so that's what my talk is going to be about. So that's cool. That like I said, it's kind of scary that people are coming to me for advice, because this is the same conference I would go to, and it was like, what's an ad rate? What are ad rate? Like I didn't know anything about anything.
Right.
And so so it's kind of cool that it's coming full circle, that I can now help out people that are not just in the Magic space, but also in just like digital publishing. And so that's next week.
looking forward to that. Thank you for making multiple public appearances here then. I hope I haven't overtaxed you too much on that front. I do have one final thing, and it's fine if you don't have an answer for this, because I am kind of jumping this on you. But it is possibly the most important question. Do you have a challenge the stats pick? What is a card that you think is overplayed or vastly underplayed?
Oh, I have so many.
Good to hear. Heck yeah.
All right. So one of my favorite cards lately has been Raging River.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if this really fits into challenge the stats, but so it's this really old enchantment. Here, I actually have it on my desk right now.
Terrific.
And it's the silliest card, but I like it because it is silly. It's only 2 mana, and it makes things a lot harder to block.
That's the one that sort of factor fictions your opponent's blockers.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
They have to divide into like one side of the river and the other side of the river, and then you'll choose that only one half of those creatures can block, basically. So almost like a menace ability. Yeah. But if you combine it with menace, it's even more deadly. But in either case, your opponents are not going to be able to block you effectively. So it pushes a lot of damage through.
So if you are trying to connect with damage and things in red, then it works out really good. It works out small scales, large scales. And I've been playing it in a lot of red decks because, like, for example, I had a deck that wanted all my goblins to connect to my opponents. Mm-hmm. I had my Iros deck, who generally wants Iros to be pretty unblockable. It already has Menace. So with Raging River out and Iros, you need 4 creatures to be able to block Iros. So
it's so bad.
And also, too, it's a weird card. It's kind of funny to explain. I think the one big downside is that I think it's pretty expensive at this point. I mean, it's reserve list. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just proxy it.
Yeah, I feel like this is a world of difference between proxying like a Gaia's Cradle, which could really push up the power of a deck.
Yes.
But if you're proxying a Raging River, I think that brings nothing but smiles for sure.
100%. I think it brings a lot of joy to the games. It's funny. I mean, the art's awesome. But in all seriousness, I love playing old weird stuff, but it always overperforms. And it's that 2 mana. It's so easy to fit into anything. It's not just in my Iros deck because it was good, but it's been in most of my red decks that care about combat damage, which is most of them. So huge fan of Raging River, and yeah, it's just a cool card overall.
Fantastic. The decks that you play and how wild they are, the polite stacks that you play, and of course your opinion on over underplayed cards or something I wanted to make sure that we bookend this episode with, because there's been a lot of business talk, but also sometimes we're just here for the cards too. So It's good to know what cards you have your eye on as you're navigating through this game that honestly itself does sometimes feel like a bit of a Raging River, because it just keeps on going and going and evolving in ways that are a lot to keep up with. It's been nice to touch base with you. Don, thank you again so much for your time. And
thanks for having me.
I'll say it again too. Thank you also for the support that you continue to give out to the community. You've got a pay it forward attitude about the Magic community that I think it's very rare for a business person of your stature to have. So
I would like to say it's not rare here. I was helped out early on by some content creators, and that's one of the best things about working here. I hope I can do it for the rest of my career. Right? So, it's been awesome.
Well, I think we're going to call it there then. So thank you so much, everybody. If you want to follow up with us, you can find me at Joseph M. Schultz everywhere online, and you can follow the cast everywhere at EDHRECast on all platforms. If you want even more peeks behind the curtain, as it were, you could consider joining us over on Patreon. That's going to be patreon.com/EDHRECast to join our Discord, chat with us every day there, or get exclusive videos and more. And of course, if you like the video, let YouTube know and subscribe for even more. And of course, as always, remember, EDHREC your deck before you wreck your deck.